It's February 23rd, 1997. This is the fifth tape. Dr. Klein, tell us a little bit about, just take us quickly through your education.
Right. Well, when I came here to the States in 1951, I worked part-time and I enrolled as a part-time student at Brooklyn College. And in the fall, I enrolled as a full-time student.
And you graduated from Brooklyn College what year?
I graduated from Brooklyn College in 1955, 4 years after coming to this country. And following that, I went to medical school at Union University and Albany Medical College, and I graduated in 1959. I spent a year as an intern at Bellevue Hospital in New York City, and then 1 year as an assistant resident at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. And then I served 2 years in the United States Air Force, serving abroad at a small U.S. Air Force hospital in Upper Hayford in Oxfordshire, England. The 3918th U.S. Air Force Hospital, I believe it was. And I was there for 2 years, doing my 2 years of military service, my obligation having completed. I returned to the States in the summer of '63 and took further training in medicine and cardiology at Montefiore Hospital and then at the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center, and finishing in 1966.
And you got married?
I got married in 1968 to Hildebeth Ruda, and we have 2 lovely children.
What are their names?
My oldest one is Elizabeth Mara, and my youngest one is Pamela Ruda Klein. Elizabeth is here. Unfortunately, Pamela could not join us. She is studying abroad right now. She's taking her semester abroad in Paris.
And you're divorced from your...
I'm divorced. I've been divorced for 13 years now. And Elizabeth is living in the city and working, and Pamela is going to school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin, and she lives here.
And you practice cardiology?
I practice cardiology and internal medicine in New York City, affiliated with the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center.
And your parents, they passed away?
My father passed his license examination here when he came to this country, and he was in private practice until he passed away in 1985. Mm-hmm. And my mother unfortunately passed away just last month, January 7th, 1997. I wanted her to do this interview. She was reluctant to talk about it, very reluctant to talk about it. And she finally agreed to talk about it, but she was quite sick at the end and just couldn't do it. So I decided that I thought that I should do it.
Had you ever talked about your experience before?
To whom?
To your family or?
Yes, I would mention certain pieces here and a piece there to the children when they ask questions or when it was relevant to the particular situation that we were in. I've made a secret out of it. On the other hand, I never went out of my way to emphasize that part of the story, although I think it's an important part, very important part, which is the reason I'm doing it right now, is because it was a very unique time in history of the world, in history of the Jews especially. And I think that story needs to be told. And I would like that story to be told to the world, but it also, especially in terms of my own family, my children and their children and so forth, that story should be told from one generation to the other. As they say, when you say the Seder, you basically repeat the same thing. You say, this story should be told from one generation to the other. And I think just as the story of the exodus of the Jews from Egypt is told every year over and over again, from one generation to the other, from one year to the next, I think the story of the Holocaust should be told from one generation to the other, to the third, and so forth, because it is such a unique history, unique happening for the Jewish people and for the world at large. So I don't think that should ever be forgotten. I think it's very, very important that the people that people know about it.
How would you say the experience has affected you?
It's a difficult question. It has affected me in the way, as I say, that number one, I think it's important that that be held paramount, and I think it's that be remembered. I'm very aware of anti-Semitism, more so than I think than some of the people who are my age who have not gone through this. So it has affected me in that sense. There are probably other ways that it has affected me, but I just can't think of that right now. I haven't really focused on that. But from the historical perspective and the perspective of the generations to come, I think it's very important, because history does repeat itself. And the more we know about that, the less hopefully it's going to repeat itself.
Do you have any final message that you'd like to share with us?
I think the final message is, tell it to the next generation.
Okay, Elizabeth is here with her father, and I just want to ask you, any thoughts about your dad and his experience and the fact that he's doing this tape, and anything you really want to say?
Nothing that I really want to say. I think one of the catalysts for this tape was my grandmother's death and my uncle's death, and I'm glad that he's doing it, and they can be a part of history. I think that things are forgotten very easily.
Your uncle, what's his name?
Eric Hauser.
Dr. Klein, you want to say anything to your
Well,
daughter on tape, or?
Well, she's right. She's been after me to do this, and I've been procrastinating, and I wanted my mother to do this because she has more of a recall than I do, but unfortunately, as I said before, she became ill and passed away quite rapidly, so she could not do it. But also Mr. Eric Hauser died, and he died in December. But Mrs. Hauser is here, and she promised me that she was going to do this as well. So that would be helpful if she were to do this. Unfortunately, Pamela's not here, but she was, I think she would agree that this is a good thing to do, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know a lot about your family's history growing up?
I knew, I was certainly always aware of it. As far as I can remember, I was always aware of it. It's always hard to keep the dates straight because there are so many different activities, there's so many different, periods of time and so much movement, I think, that went on. And I was aware of my grandparents and my dads and my aunt and uncle as well, all having gone through the Holocaust.
How do you think it's affected you?
I think that it's affected me perhaps in ways of thinking about survival in terms of what they've had to go through to be here and to start over again, and what it's meant to really start from nothing. I think that just a matter of respect for that, for the power of education, starting from scratch. And I think that I'm lucky that my grandfather was a physician, because that enabled him to start over again. Something that sort of crossed cultures maybe more easily than other fields.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's pretty much how it's affected me.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I'm just very glad and very proud that she's here, that's all. This photo was probably taken around 1932. It was taken, I suspect, in Skole, which is the town we lived in, and the going from left to right, that is Edmund Reiss, who is my mother's brother. Next to him is my mother, Nika Klein. Next to her is her mother, Bertha Reiss, and standing next to Mrs. Reiss is my father, Paul E. Klein. This picture was probably taken around 1932. My parents, my father on the left, my mother on the right, they are on their honeymoon in Gdańsk, or Gdynia, as the Polish call it. It was a brief honeymoon on the seashore.
You know when?
About 1932. This picture of my parents, my mother on the left, my father on the right, was most likely taken in Skole, Poland, in the early 30s.
And their names?
The names, my mother, Nika Klein, and my father, Paul Emanuel Klein. This is a picture of me, Ludwig Klein, in our home in Poland, Skole. I must have been around 3 years old or so at the time. You see on the right in the back is a porcelain stove used for heating the room. It was a wood-burning type of stove, no cooking, of course. And one of my favorite toys on the left bottom on the right bottom, I should say, an inflatable rubber cat, which is a toy I still remember to this day.
Yeah. Hmm.
Why remember the toy?
This is a picture of me on the left, and my mother, Nika Klein, on the right. This was taken when I was about 5 years old in our dining room. Probably around 1938 or thereabouts.
And where was this?
In Skole, Poland, in our dining room home. This is a picture of my mother, Nika Klein. It was taken in Vienna in 1948, probably as a passport photo prior to coming to the United States in 1951. This is a picture of my father, Paul E. Klein. It was taken in Vienna, Austria in 1948, probably as a passport photo prior to coming to the United States in 1951. This is a picture of the house that we lived in Skole, Poland. It was on the main street. You can see my father's shingle on that white square on the lower left corner. It says Dr. I. Klein. At that time, my father's first name was Israel, which he then changed to Paul when he came to this country. This was directly across the street from my grandparents' compound, my grandparents being Samuel and Miriam Klein. This is the house we lived in when my parents got married, and I lived there until 1942, and it was in one of the two gables on the right, either the furthest one on the right or next to the one to the right, where my father built a hiding place where we hid during the Nazi raids on the town to arrest and deport Jews. And we could see what was going on from that gable through a little hole in the roof, what was going on the street. As I recall, the name of the street was Ulica Pilsudska, after the Polish former president. This is a picture of my mother on the left, Nika Klein, and my father, Paul Klein, on the right. In 1951, it was the ship that we came over here, and we landed in April of 1951. The name of the ship is USS Taylor, General USS Taylor. It was a transport ship transporting displaced persons who were emigrating to the United States. This is a picture of me during college graduation from Brooklyn College in 1955. This is a picture of my mother in the center with my father's reflection in the left on the left-hand side, who is taking the picture.
When was this taken?
This was taken probably in the mid to late 60s. It is a view from the porch when my parents were living at 645 Water Street, downtown Manhattan. This is a picture of my mother, Nika Klein, on the left, my father, Paul Klein, on the right, and my firstborn daughter, Elizabeth Mara Klein, in the middle, being very proudly held by her grandfather. This was taken probably in 1971 at my parents' house on Water Street. This is a picture of my youngest daughter, Pamela Klein, on the left, me in the middle, and my mother, Nika Klein, on the right. This picture was taken on 86th Street in this house. It was taken in 1995. This picture was taken in January of 1997. It was taken here on East 86th Street. The person in the middle is my uncle, Edmund Rice. He is the brother of my mother, Nika Klein. To the left is my youngest daughter, Pamela Klein, and on the right is my oldest daughter, Elizabeth Klein.